Hi everyone, welcome back to the garden. This is the part of the garden I never usually show you, the part with the bridge, with the river, the ducks and everything. Obviously not, we're here at Chatsworth House today and it's a rare day out. I wanted to come out with a camera at some point during the Christmas holidays. It's one of my first days off work in quite a while and I saw the forecast for today. So I set my alarm nice and early and as it was I got a rubbish night's sleep, so if I look a bit tired I definitely am. But I came all the way here, got here bright and early because I thought it was going to be clear skies, -2, -3, so a really heavy frost. And as it turns out, there's quite a bit of cloud. Yes, there's still a bit of a light frost, and as you can probably tell by my breath, it's definitely still cold. But you're pleased to know that I've got a hoodie on and 2 shirts underneath, so I'm definitely prepared. It's not big coat weather yet, not at all. So Chatsworth House is one of my favourite gardens, or certainly one of my favourite gardens outside of Cornwall anyway. So today I just wanted to have a quick show you around. My original plan was a purely photo day, but I decided to flip that on its head now and get a bit of a video put together. Firstly, I want to show you just around the house and the gardens. It is absolutely an amazing place, but then focus on the evergreen plants in here, because I think one of the best things about this garden is that structure. You can come here at any time of the year and it's absolutely packed full of amazing plants, amazing views and just incredible scenery. So I want to show you a bit of that, and then also the bamboo tunnel here, which was the inspiration for my little bamboo tunnel at home. Mine's still young, but hopefully it'll look something like the one here one day. If you haven't been to Chatsworth House before, or you've never heard of it, then you should definitely check it out and come visit. It really is a very special place. You've got an amazing house set in a beautiful landscape designed by Capability Brown. You've got some real history here, even history about banana plants, weirdly enough. The Dwarf Cavendish name actually comes from here. But anyway, this video isn't a history lesson, it's just a walk around the place, showing you the things that really appeal to me, especially at a time of year when a lot of the landscape is just brown, grey and waiting for spring. So whilst it's not too cold to be walking around with a camera bag, it definitely is a bit chilly to be standing around talking. So let's have a look around. Before we go into the garden, I just thought I'd show you the greenhouse. And this bed here, this is one of the most interesting to me. So you've got some amazing banana plants towering over, and I just thought I'd show you a few of the different sorts. Now I am wearing a face mask and using the camera's internal microphone, so the sound might not be great, but here you've got a Dwarf Cavendish. As you can see, some of the lower, younger leaves are more mottled. As it gets bigger, they turn plainer, and it's definitely not a hardy banana. So we have to bring it indoors in the UK or grow it inside if you're lucky enough to have your own glass house. There's some Ensete, and those looked after by Ian. These were planted out as small plants this spring. So you can see with the shelter being grown in a big greenhouse, just how fast they can grow. The extra heat, look at the size of those leaves, they're absolutely massive. But even bigger still, the Musa basjoo. Now this is a hardy banana in the UK, but grown in a greenhouse, you obviously don't need to protect it during winter, and the size of the leaves is even bigger. Just look at those. Now the key with Musas is basically keep them sheltered from the wind, and if you can keep them sheltered from the wind, the leaves look absolutely incredible. But obviously wind damage is perfectly natural. And then you've also got a Cyathea parryi and some amazing tree ferns. So whilst greenhouses probably aren't technically winter interest, I think wherever I go, I enjoy going into the greenhouses, seeing what's growing there. And even if it's the same kind of plants that we grow in our gardens in summer, in fact especially if it is, it's always good to have a shot of that tropical vibe in the middle of winter. And I think here at Chatsworth, although it's quite a small greenhouse setup, it's definitely no exception. And what Ian and the team have done there, particularly I like that one section with the Ensete, the Musa basjoo and the Dwarf Cavendish banana. It's amazing to see how they grow indoors. Obviously it is heated a little bit in winter, but it's certainly not kept to 10 or 15 degrees. It does get a good bit cooler than that. So it's fascinating to see just how well they can keep ticking over in winter and how much growth they can put on in summer. I think really it's a combination of the lack of wind, the extra heat, probably just that warmth, really creating a sheltered atmosphere. It just means the leaves get so much bigger, and it really is exciting to see. And like I have mentioned, those banana plants were only planted this spring, so it really does show you just how fast they can size up. And it's also interesting to see the Dicksonia antartica. Technically, they're not really a plant that does well in greenhouses because it can be too dry for them. But obviously the humidity there is kept top notch because they've grown really well, putting out some really good fronds. So there's a couple of Dicksonias there, and there's also a Cyathea and Dicksonia. So it's fantastic to see. Yes, I know it's not a big greenhouse in the scheme of things, but I think wherever you can get a shot of tropical vibes at this time of year, you've got to take it. And going further through the greenhouse, into the Mediterranean style area, you can just see into the more tropical zone at the far end. There's all kinds of vines, big leaf plants there, look absolutely incredible. And also of note, there's a flowering agave. That's an agave parryi. It looks absolutely alien. I don't know if you've seen a flowering agave before, but from that giant rosette, they send up basically a huge, great big flowering spike, and even on a small potted plant, it's definitely a spectacle. So let's get cracking with the garden. So I think one of the key components in any kind of winter garden to really create that interest 365 days a year is evergreens. A bit of an obvious one really, but here at Chatsworth, evergreens are really a key part of a display. There's so many different kinds with the glossy leaves, massive shrubs, and also a huge amount of conifers. And interestingly, I watched a Zoom lecture by Fergus Garrett, who runs Great Dixter, and one of his tips in there was to actually introduce conifers into an exotic or jungle garden to really create that Jurassic feel. Now, in my garden at home, I've already got a few different sort of interesting evergreens, and then I've also got a few conifers, including a Wollemi pine, which is only small at the minute. I've got a monkey puzzle tree, and then I've also got my weeping pine, Pinus patula. So I like to have the conifers in there, and I think for me, they really take an exotic garden to that other level, really. Having something a bit unusual that people won't have seen before, it really sets it off, especially in the depths of winter. In spring, summer and autumn, it's not hard to have a garden full of colour, big leaves, flowers, whatever you're into, it's definitely achievable. But in the depths of winter, when your garden's grey, brown, I think something evergreen really stands out. And if you look down here, you'll see the Gunnera manicata. And these are a plant that's definitely a feature in my summer garden, but if you look at them in winter, they look absolutely nothing. They're basically covered over with their old leaves, so you lose a plant that brings so much structure to your garden. What do you replace that with in winter? That is the question. And I'm not saying you should go to creating a dwarf conifer bed. I think things have moved past that point now. But there's definitely some exciting evergreens that you can plant to bring interest to your garden all around the year. So whilst we don't all have room for towering rhododendrons, massive conifers like these, huge monkey puzzle tree there, and even bigger sequoia in the background, we definitely don't have room for things on this scale, and certainly a lot of them take years and years to grow, maybe even centuries. But I think still, even in a small garden, evergreens are so important, and just having something that you can look at that stays green, that has structure all the way through the year, it's definitely a vital part of any garden, whatever the effect you're trying to create. But they don't have to be big, something interesting, anything really that draws your eye, and something maybe that actually frost looks good on, rather than worrying about the frost attacking it. A lot of evergreens, they look really structural, really architectural, even in the depths of winter. Heading through the land of giants then, all different kinds of conifers. There's one in particular that I wanted to show you. Yes, obviously if we had big enough gardens, we'd all love to grow giant redwoods like these ones here. They look absolutely incredible, just absolutely tower over you. But it's this one here, the Wollemi pine, which is obviously very rare in the wild if you know anything about it. But in cultivation, they're actually proving to be quite popular. And they're a plant that, unfortunately, they are quite expensive, but they're definitely a novelty. Something that you'd want to have in your garden, and something that other people ask what it is. And this one here, you can even see at the top there, it's got cones on it. I think they're a fantastic looking plant. Definitely not conventionally beautiful maybe, but they've certainly got a sort of Jurassic vibe to them, and definitely an evergreen that I want to grow more of in my garden if I could afford them. I think a glade of them would look absolutely fantastic. But obviously it shows here in Derbyshire, This garden is in a bit of a frost pocket, and if a plant like this can survive here, it's something that you can grow in your garden without any kind of worries in winter. I think here it just looks absolutely perfect, nestled in amongst these absolute giants. Another garden design tip, I suppose really for all seasons, but especially during the winter months, is having a focal point. Like behind me there, those charred tree trunks, that sculpture, it really stands out of you as you walk around the corner. And I think Chatsworth, it's something that it does really well. So whether it's a charred tree trunk, or an urn on a plinth, or even the iconic cascading steps of water leading down to the house, I think having something to look at, no matter how long your vista, we obviously can't all have half a mile of walkway leading up to a point, but I think even in a small garden, just having a pot full of maybe winter interest, some plants that are really sculptural, something like that, it really gives your garden a certain something. It gives it more of a design element and something to focus your eye on, rather than just staring out over bare earth. I think just having a point there of interest, it really draws your eye to it, and it's definitely a way of having more interest in your garden. It's been a very peaceful walk around this land of the giants, and amazing to see the sheer variety of conifers. Just look at the size of them too. You can almost imagine a dinosaur just popping around from there. Hopefully it doesn't, obviously. But obviously we don't all have room for beauties like these in our gardens, especially not ones like this. But if I ever won the lottery or became a billionaire and had some way of living for 500 years, I'd definitely plant some of these in the garden. I think they look absolutely amazing. But on from these, which are more spectacles than anything else, to a plant that you can grow in your garden to bring evergreen interest. Yes, it's the one I talked about earlier, it's the bamboos, the inspiration for my bamboo tunnel. So let's head round there now. Just on the way, some more Gunnera manicata here, sleeping for winter, set against this amazing backdrop of evergreens. Just looks incredible. Here's some more of the alien-like Gunneras overwintering under the leaves. As you can see, the water's still frozen. Well, not frozen, one to walk on it, but it's definitely got a frosted top to it. These look amazing in summer, but in winter, they're just like alien eggs, just ready to hatch, which I guess they basically are. And over there, you can see an example of a monkey puzzle, just how big they can get. Mine will get that big eventually, but it's definitely going to take some years. I think another winter gardening tip is that you don't have to use evergreens, but you can still have plants that got strong winter interest. Planted berries, like those behind me there, or something like this over here, which is a cherry tree. I've often admired this bark when I visited Chatsworth. Just look at that finish. It's got an amazing, it almost feels artificial, really shiny, and it's a beautiful looking plant. So obviously with trees it's easier to get something with interesting bark, but you can still get shrubs that have got strong forms, strong shapes, even when the leaves are missing. But I just wanted to show you these. I just think they look absolutely incredible. Amazing shiny finish to them. Okay, so there's maybe a chance that I've taken us a long way around, and the bamboo's at the other end of the maze down there, so definitely getting the old step count up today. But it's nice just to have a walk around, taking that atmosphere and see some of these amazing plants somewhere with the space to actually enjoy them. I think another important point is that evergreens don't have to be massive. And yes, I know I've just shown you some towering conifers and we're heading to see some really tall bamboos. But even if you've got a small garden, there's still plenty of room for evergreens. And I don't think it's just tied to an exotic garden. Whatever the style of garden you've got, whether it's a cottage garden, a woodland garden, Japanese style garden, there's definitely some small evergreens that really fit in. And I just wanted to show you here a couple of really good examples. So I'll just flip us around. And you'll see down here we've got some Hellebores, which are very good at this time of year because you actually get the flowers too. So you get the foliage and the flowers to really pack a lot of winter interest. And looking back there, ferns. Now I think ferns, they're a bit sort of cliched as being a plant for shady areas full stop. There's lots of different varieties that can thrive in drier areas, even areas with a bit more sun. But just look how well here they can tie the tall evergreen plants behind into this area here, which presumably is going to be full of plants in spring. They really help create a natural atmosphere. I don't think there's any better plant than ferns for really giving that sort of naturalistic, real life, you know, sort of jungle environment. But anyway, let's head back down there towards the maze and closer to the bamboos. One last stop before we get to the bamboo, I promise, and we're here in the exotic garden. Now, it's obviously a little bit bare at this time of year, but there's still some really tough, really hardy exotics, bringing the colour and the architectural shapes through the winter months. Now, I have done a video looking at easy evergreens for your garden to bring an exotic flair, but I thought while I was here in a colder garden than mine, where they don't get any kind of protection, I thought I'd show the reality of actually growing these plants and what thrives despite the cold. So let's have a look round. So firstly, we've got a Fatsia Japonica. Now, you might have seen my videos where I talk about how tough this plant is, how it can withstand any cold. But if you look at that growing point there, you'll see it's pretty black and pretty mushy. But unfortunately, when they do see deep cold, a really, really sharp frost, the growing points do get nipped. But it's not the end of the world for the plant. And what you'll see is, just a bit down that point there, you'll see other growing points, and that's where the plant will sprout from in spring. So they're very quick at bouncing back, and what you'll end up with if you grow this plant in a more exposed location like this here, where there's pretty much nothing above it, it's going to see a lot of frost here, you'll get a bushier plant that's got more growing points. So it's not the end of the world, and it's a plant that will look fantastic. It's still, from a distance, still looks great, still very colourful, but in spring it'll be pretty much as good as new. Got a phormium there. There are some quite large ones here, but as I mentioned in my video on phormiums, if you go green, go for the plain ones. They're definitely a lot tougher, so that's something to keep in mind if you live in a more borderline area. And here, Trachycarpus fortunii, lovely palm, and a tiny bit of yellow in there on the leaves, but other than that, looks as good as new. You can probably see there, it's still quite cold, still got about that dark mottling on the leaves, or the fronds, but that will disappear as soon as it warms up a bit. Another lovely phormium there. It's a massive one, this one. Very architectural, lovely colour to it. Can you imagine what that would look like with lights on it? Absolutely fantastic. Heading round, you'll see some very poorly looking Phoenix canariensis. Now, as we're in December, we haven't seen any real deep cold yet this year. I suspect this damage is actually from this spring, when, well, even at home in North Lincolnshire, it was around -6 and there was a few ice days potentially. Here, it could have been significantly colder, and that might have done it in. Or alternatively, if these were grown inside a greenhouse or bought in fresh this spring and then planted out, so they haven't seen any cold, they haven't actually grown fronds or leaves that are actually tough enough to withstand it, it could just be that this growth has been nipped in a very sharp early frost. It's hard to tell, but it definitely tells a story that if you live somewhere where you go and see cold, plants like that, they're not necessarily the best ones to grow. Compared to the fortunii, tough, green, amazing structure, despite the frost. Another lovely phormium there. You can see there, another poorly looking phoenix, but compared to that, on this side here, you've got the phormiums looking vibrant, a little bit damaged but nothing much, and the fortunii growing strongly. And heading up this way, again, while your big leaf plants are dormant, you've still got the phormiums standing up strong, bringing so much structure to this winter garden. Fatsia, they all seem to have had the tips nipped a little bit, but I guess that's to be expected if you live in a really exposed location. And again, some of the brighter coloured phormiums, they have got a bit of damage, but the green ones, the yellow ones, standing up strong. And here is a very healthy looking Trachycarpus fortunii. Just look at how chunky that trunk is. And usually that's a sign of a plant that's been actually planted small and left to mature and grow in its location, rather than one that's been bought large. They tend to have a smaller trunk if they've been grown in Spain or France, somewhere hotter, whereas that one is an absolute beauty. Very healthy as well. One way you can tell how healthy a palm is just by how many green fronds or leaves that it carries. So this one doesn't have a small canopy, it really has developed well. And there's a waggy. Lovely plant. It might have taken a while to get here. It's still cold. I've done a lot of steps today, but you can probably hear my voice echoing in this archway because we're at the start, finally, of the bamboo tunnel. Now, this is the actual place that inspired me to grow my own bamboo tunnel at home, and I think bamboos, they're a fantastic plant for bringing winter interest to your garden. I know there's a lot of myths about them. A lot of people try to put you off growing bamboos, but the truth is, if you choose the right variety, or if you do choose a runner, you control it appropriately, they're a fantastic plant for bringing winter interest to your garden. You've got the amazing canes, you've got those leaves reaching right up into the sky, and they bring a lot of height to your winter garden, which is certainly something that most gardeners miss in winter. Once those summer flowers have died down, your plants have been chopped off or brought inside for winter, you need something out there with a bit of height to really make your garden feel like a garden. And bamboo, it's a great choice. Yes, they do shed their old leaves a bit, but I think the beauty, the strength against everything the weather can throw at them, it certainly makes up for it. They're one of my favourite plants, and I just want to quickly show you this amazing tunnel. So my garden obviously isn't quite as big as this, and my bamboo tunnel's a lot more confined, but still I want to try to create this kind of feeling, that the bamboo's wrapping around you, arching over the top of you. There's so many different bamboos available, from the Phyllostachys nigra, which personally I think is a little bit overrated, but they do look nice, to clumpers that stay neat. You can see here typical clumpers expanding slowly, but never running away from the main clump. And as you head through here, I think the sheer variety of them hits you. Some with larger leaves, some with smaller, more delicate leaves. There's just so many different types to look at. If I had to guess, I'd say this one here is a Fargesia robusta. And at home, I grow Fargesia robusta Campbell. My plants aren't as large as this. And this one is pretty much about as tall as they get. Here, dipped in a little valley, it's probably going to grow taller than it would somewhere more exposed. But it's still a fantastic plant. So even though it's a clumper, even though it's relatively compact, it will still get to a decent sized clump, but it's never going to run and start growing over there. This one is only going to expand slowly, but you've still got a good amount of height and a good amount of leaves. So with clumpers, you generally don't get really thick culms or canes, but you grow them for the overall look of the plant. Some are more graceful, others have really got strong structure, and I think Fargesia robusta Campbell is a good mix between the two. But if you really want a special clumper, then have a look over here. This one, I believe, I am guessing because there's no labels on it, this one is a Borinda papyrifera. There's not too many different blue bamboos, and this is honestly a real spectacle. Let's just walk over here. Just look at the size of that. So even though it's a clumper, this cane here, or culm, is well over an inch across. Absolutely incredible colour. It's a real ghostly blue. And the other thing that strikes you about this is just how big it is. Just look at the size of that. It's an amazing plant, and this is one plant that really shows you don't have to grow running bamboo to have something truly massive. So if you look at the base, I imagine this is two plants, and each one is just over, say, 1.5 meters across, somewhere around there. But from that, you're getting canes that are maybe 40 mil, and a plant, if I had to guess, was about 7 meters tall. It's absolutely amazing. Obviously, having a garden this big really lets you experiment, and there's lots of new plantings here, which is good to see. So many different varieties. At home, I've had to really choose what I wanted to grow, but still, Borindas like this, absolutely incredible, and there's certainly something that I've got a few of in my garden. So as we head through, you'll see again the sheer variety of different bamboos, from golden ones through to bluey green ones, shorter, daintier bamboos, right the way up to huge towering monsters. Like that one up there, I'd say that's pushing 7 again, 8 meters tall. And I think they're such an important plant for a winter garden because of the atmosphere they create. They're not just a plant that you look at or walk past. They're a plant that really sort of leans over you, and it really transforms the garden. It definitely feels like another exotic environment. And this is a feeling that I want to create, even in a small way, in our garden at home. So this really is one of the highlights of Chatsworth. I guess really they wouldn't be advertised on the brochure as such, but to me, the feeling of walking down here, it really is incredible. Now the light's fading, I thought I'd give you my final couple of tips. When it comes to winter gardening, believe me, I am going to say this, it's not all about the plants, and hard landscaping definitely has its place. I think when there's less plants in the garden, when there's less going on, you really notice the structural elements. And here at Chatsworth, we're in the rock garden. It's probably the best example of a rock garden you'll ever see. It's a long way from the sort of cliched 70s pile of rocks with a few dwarf conifers. This is a rockery on a massive scale. There's thousands of tons of rock, all moved here, all positioned exactly where they need to be. And at the minute, it's lit up for Christmas. So whilst everyone's not going to have this at home, I know personally I won't be having a setup like this. For a start, the neighbours might moan about the constant classical music, but I think it really is an example of what hard landscaping and what lighting can do for your winter garden. So it's been a cracking day out here. I certainly got my steps in for today, and I hope there's been a few helpful tips in this video on how you can improve your winter garden. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.